Three men started with a vision. Today, soccer is a common word. Well, one of them reached home with me as he was my father, Eddie Jimenez. He started and began playing with the Cincinnati Comets. The Cincinnati Comets was one of the first professional soccer teams here in the tri-state area. The Cincinnati Comets was a professional soccer team in Cincinnati, Ohio. The team played in American Soccer League, a league that existed from 1933 until 1983. The Comets played only 4 seasons from 1972 to 1975, winning the American Soccer League championship in its first session. This was the beginning stages. By 1975, unfortunately, the Cincinnati Comets was no longer. Well, for many spectators, this became a very sad moment. In 1975, they had a decision to make. How could they bring soccer fans back to life again? And what is it going to take to make that happen? While some fans still stay loyal, soccer was still important to those men that started. But how could they make a difference? How could they reach more people? By starting a soccer team at the high school level. The Green Hills soccer team, one of the first soccer teams in the early 70s to be created by these same men. Why was this so important? And why did this matter? It mattered because this was going to make a big difference between what we knew as football and what Latin Americans called football, which we now call soccer. By the late 1970s, soccer was now starting to become more popular, even so much that European countries were playing soccer on a regular basis. Now, by the early 80s, this is also moving to the women and the men, and uniforms are becoming more and more modernized. As we're entering the 80s, soccer continues to boom. As soccer is soaring across the tri-state area, it took something that started out as a dream and aspiration, something that became small and is now changing our entire city from the way that we knew it. Soccer entering high schools, soccer entering colleges, and once more, soccer going full force and complete full circle as they all come back together from the Cincinnati Comets to reunite and celebrate where they were and where they are. It's important to understand where we were when we started with Say Soccer. Say Soccer was created so that any child at any level could play and participate in a soccer team. However, as things were starting to grow, by the 80s and the 90s, soccer exploded, causing soccer to go into many publications across the country, and more importantly, to become something that became so competitive, they ended up creating and coming up with club soccers, different rosters, and a much more competitive edge to soccer than what we were used to. As the soccer clubs continue to form and create, they continue to grow not only in Ohio, but across the country and across the world. Soccer was not one that was not known any longer, as it became almost synonymous with football, which is actually ironic considering in Spanish, soccer is football. When we look back at where we were and where we are, I think it's very important to take the time to look at the accomplishments that we have made. In Ohio, we have created and started back in as early as the 1990s. Crew Stadium was christened May 15, 1990, and they won 2-0. The Major League Soccer commissioner at that time was Doug Logan, and he was relaunching the league so that they could be established as black and gold. As you see here, I wanted to touch base that not only was soccer becoming important with men in the world, but women in the world, young girls in the world. And that's why Say had created, so that again everyone could play. The Columbus Crew became a very famous soccer and is currently very famous in Columbus, Ohio. In the past 20 years, the Major League Soccer has established itself as a top 3 professional league in America, based on attendance, This consists of 20 teams in 14 states and 2 countries, with 14 soccer-specific stadiums, and by 2017, this league will be expanding to 22 teams and 16 soccer-specific stadiums. While this has become a passion for myself, it's amazing how soccer has actually grown, not only here in the United States, but abroad. What was more enlightening is that soccer has now reached a whole new length, a whole new depth of where it was and where it is. From uniforms to soccer pads to the rules and regulations that they set forth in this organization, to even taking it a step further and companies capitalizing on the sport and now creating it for the gaming systems in the 2000s. In the late 90s, gaming systems became popular, but by 2000, as soccer was imploding, they now became a football manager in 2000 for the soccer leagues. You could then create your own team, create your own look, and not only could you play on the field, but now you could enter this fantasy world of where you could play. But why is all of this important? And why am I bringing up so many different aspects of what soccer is? Because it's important to understand that a few men who started with this small dream ended up imploding this institution of soccer on so many. Soccer was affected by so many different people in so many different walks of life, with no bearing for if you had money or if you didn't have money, if you were really good or if you were just that child that grabbed your shorts and looked at flowers. But again, it reached out to so many kids across the country that this is where it became very critical. That this one little dream, this one little aspiration of where things wanted to be, created into so many of these clubs and so many of these teams and so much of select soccer as we see now. The competition has become greater. Soccer has become something that we never expected it to be. And I'm sure in the late 60s, they never thought that it would implode to this level. So now looking at soccer and looking at where we are today, how amazing it is that one of the largest competitions has now come all the way full circle back to Ohio. When we look at the Nike Cup, when we look at the Major League Soccer Association, when we look at all of those entities such as Cincinnati United, or Midwest, or Kings, or Legends, all of those soccer teams were able to celebrate, were able to hold soccer to a whole new level, and were able to bring what we once started here in the tri-state to implode this entire state. I think when I look back at the assignment and when I look back at the things that I wanted to touch and look on with this movie, I wanted to show the excitement and the joy, the sorrow, the agony, the defeat, the passion for what this all is, soccer. It's not only what I grew up with, but it's now what so many of us will grow up with, appreciate, and continue to grow.